If I were to ask you today to think of God performing a miracle, what would your first thought be? You might immediately refer back to the stories in the Bible and think of all the signs and wonders that God did in the Old and New Testament. Did you know that there are 81 accounts of God doing the miraculous in the Bible? Another thought that you may have when thinking of God performing miracles is of testimonies of people's lives being changed. Whether that be a blind man's eyes being opened, or a woman walking out of a wheelchair at a revival, or perhaps an atheist who has been searching for the truth his whole life finally finds satisfaction. God has done many miracles in people's lives all over the world, whether that be big or small. But I want to share with you today a miracle that God did in my life this summer. I had struggled with my health and weight for many years, and I had seen several counsellors and nutritionists to try and help me. But nothing seemed to work for the long term, and my health was quickly deteriorating. A friend of mine recommended bariatric surgery. I was really unsure at first, but after praying it with my friends and family, we felt comfort and that it was the right decision for me to do. A few months later, in May 2018, I had the surgery. The operation was successful and I was really adapting to the new way of life. However, a month later, I began to be sick. I was unable to take any food or water down without bringing it all back up again. We had the night doctor come and visit me. However, none of the medications seemed to work as they should, so he recommended that I go to A&E, and so I did. It was then at the hospital that they discovered that I had blockage in my small intestine, which was caused by scar tissue. It was vital that I was to be operated on to remove that blockage. I was really, really scared. I thought that I would just close my eyes and the next moment I'd be in the recovery room. But as they performed the keyhole surgery, they removed the scar tissue, and as they were finishing the procedure, the surgeon noticed bile that was leaking from my intestine into my abdominal cavity. My bowel had been punctured during the procedure. At this point, my vital signs crashed and they quickly went into emergency mode. And they opened me up to remove all the liquid and to close the punctured bowel. Sadly, it was too late. The bacteria had entered into my blood and caused sepsis, which is a deadly blood infection that kills 46,000 people in the UK a year alone. As the sepsis quickly spread throughout my body, all of my organs began to shut down. I had multiple organ failure and it looked like there was little hope for me. My lungs began to give in, so they decided to put me in an induced coma and on life support to keep me alive. They tried all kinds of antibiotics to kill the bacteria, but the bacteria was resistant to these antibiotics. Eventually, the doctors told my parents that they were on their last antibiotic, and if I did not respond to this last option, that there would be nothing left for them to do to save my life. For me, during this time, I was in between two places, like a strange dream. I was so scared and so confused. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake from, but I knew that God was with me through all the darkness. I had visions in the coma where I saw dark, scary figures, and I remember shouting, "Stop!" And then suddenly peace would spread over the scene, and I saw the most beautiful lake, and it had the light reflecting like this early morning sunrise, and a boat appeared with a man, and I knew instantly in my spirit that it was Jesus. I heard him audibly say, "I am with you." In the physical world, I was dying. I had a temperature of 44 degrees and my CRP levels, which is inflammation levels, were incredibly high, 482 to be precise. At my GP surgery, when they shared with the other doctors how high my CRP levels were, they said that they had never heard of anyone with those levels surviving. When I was dying, I was in this supernatural transport which had massive glass windows that I could see out of. Out of the left window, I could see this beautiful narrow path that was amongst trees that I knew in my spirit that it would lead me home to heaven if I decided to walk down that road. Out of the right window, there was a beautiful white church with the most gorgeous gospel music coming out of it. It was a beautiful day. It was sunny and warm. I remember hearing the birds singing and thinking, wow, this reminds me of South Africa. South Africa had always reminded me of heaven in some way. I saw flowers outside the church and a large photograph of me and a casket. It was then that I realised that it was my funeral. Family members and friends gathered around me in this transport. I remember my mum holding my hand saying, "Hello, darling." And I remember seeing her cry and her saying how happy she was to see me and how she was surprised that I had made it this far. I then saw my friend Karina, who walked into the room. She held in her hand a little book and came by my side. Nathan told me that Karina had travelled to come and see me just to pray. She started praying with such authority to claim the promises of God over my life. One sentence that stood with me so strongly at the time was, "My daddy died of sepsis, and I'm not going to let you die of sepsis." I remember feeling the authority that came from her, but I was also surprised, as I couldn't understand why she was declaring health over me when my funeral was about to start at any moment. It made more sense at the time for her to pray for a peaceful transition from earth to heaven. The funeral then began, so everyone had to leave the room and enter into the church. The music that came from the church was breathtaking. It felt like people were worshipping with every inch of them. I was left alone to my thoughts at this point, and I remember asking what would happen to my family and to my husband if I chose to leave. I then felt God whisper in my heart saying they too would find peace. I then looked out to the narrow path and waited to see if anyone was going to escort me home to heaven, but no one was there. But the words that Karina had declared over me echoed around my spirit, and I felt this zeal and this fight and the courage and hope of God over my life. And it was then that I decided to stay. What I didn't realise at the time was that in the physical world, Karina really was in the hospital. She did fly over to see me. She had sensed the importance of the spiritual warfare that was happening over my life. She did indeed have a book with her, and the words that I remember her speaking over me are in fact the true words that I heard, despite being in a coma. She had felt God urge her to see me and to pray for me. In fact, there were many people praying for me in Jersey and around the world. Friends had put me on prayer chains that were passed from church to church. I believe that the power of prayer is one of the main reasons that I'm sitting in front of you today. It wasn't an easy decision to stay, especially upon waking up from the coma and experiencing the pain that followed. I had lost a severe amount of muscle and I couldn't even lift my head, yet alone walk. Just sitting upright in a chair would cause me to faint. My lung had collapsed amongst other several health complications. My abdominal wound had opened due to the coughing caused by the pneumonia. I remember crying when the surgeon told me that they would have to use light anaesthetic to close me up again. They put the needle in my arm and before I knew it, I was out. But this time, I suddenly was somewhere else. I was inside of Jesus, but yet I was also outside of Jesus, watching from above. I instantly knew that he had just ascended into heaven for the first time since being raised from the dead. It seems as though I'd been taken back in time. I believed it to be the throne room, and I remember seeing millions of people and creatures there. The people and creatures started to part like the Red Sea as Jesus walked up to the Father, and the Father was sitting on the throne, and the Holy Spirit was on the right hand of the Father. The creatures and people all sang in one voice. I can't remember the exact words that they sang, but it was something along the lines of, "Jesus is coming," over and over. They would start off quiet, but then the closer Jesus got to the Father, the louder they worshipped. As he approached the throne, the Father was high up, so these steps just appeared. They were crystal-like and had no base to them. The whole time I felt everything that Jesus felt. I felt his excitement, and I remember feeling his cheeks aching from smiling so much. Jesus was only a few steps away from the Father at this point, and Jesus flung out his arms to his sides with a huge sigh of exhaustion, and he said, "Father, it was worth it." And then he said it again, "Father, it was worth it." And the whole of heaven cheered, and the Father stood up and celebrated. I then woke up. I was absolutely amazed. I couldn't wait to tell everyone what I'd seen, and I couldn't wait to tell people that they are worth it, and that Jesus thinks that they are worth it, and that they are worth dying for. I felt strongly that God had showed me this vision because he wanted to comfort me in showing the price that his Son paid for me, and knowing that Jesus has felt every sin of this world, including all the suffering that I endured, whether that be physical or mentally or emotionally. And that there will be one day in my life where I will say, "Father, it was worth it." This vision gave me such comfort. At this moment in time, I am fortunate to say that it was worth it. Despite all the darkness, amongst almost touching death, struggling to walk, and all the trauma that I went through, it was worth it because I've grown in ways that I never thought I could or would. Specialists said to me that it was unlikely that I would be better and back to normal by Christmas, and that I could potentially still be ICU in October or November. But it was an incredible moment walking out of the hospital on August 2018 and continuing the recovery at home. I am now 100% back to normal and enjoying life to the full. I feel that this experience has given me a new life, a new pair of eyes to view the world through. You see, I used to sometimes wonder if God only did miracles for some people and not everyone. I thought that his miracles were limited. But you see, his miracles are unlimited, whether they be big or small. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't matter what situation you're facing, whether it be life or death, or just a simple decision to make. God cares. He wants the best for you and has incredible plans for your life. Your life is not wasted. It has a purpose.